Most of us have ended up in the hospital, whether it's for one dreadful reason or another. And the likely outcome of our visits is that we end up with some sort of prescription. 50% of all these prescriptions end up being antibiotics, which are medicines developed specifically to kill bacteria. The antibiotic industry is always growing as we get more and more prescriptions for these antibiotics. But antibiotics have their drawbacks. One of their main cons is that bacteria grow resistance to them over time. So the question posed to us is, how do we stop this resistance? In my opinion, we cannot fix this antibiotic resistance because our main solution to combat this is not guaranteed to be successful. Our second solution is a heavy economic and health risk, and overall, the effort has to be global. So, initially, our first solution is not really effective. Our first solution is that we stop using antibiotics. In fact, kind of counterintuitive. In order to get us to use more antibiotics more effectively, we have to use less of them. From the BMC Public Health Journal in October 2017, they say to reduce inappropriate consumption of antibiotics and to more fully engage consumers into mitigating antibiotic resistance, changes in public health policy and practice are required. So basically, the government has to jump in order to get doctors and pharmaceuticals to tell us that we cannot use as many antibiotics as we want. Because the way antibiotics work and the way bacteria grows a resistance is that they become basically used to the antibiotic and they evolve while we use them. And they evolve and they spread their genes that are evolving to become resistant to this antibiotic. From the New England Journal of Medicine in 2013, it states that widespread antibiotic resistance was recently discovered among bacteria found in underground caves that have been geologically isolated from the surface of the planet for 4 million years. So that kind of contradicts our main reason, because bacteria, not only do they develop resistances to our drugs, but they also have built-in resistances. So what's the point if after a couple uses of the antibiotic that it doesn't work anymore? So our main purpose to stop this antibiotic resistance in bacteria is to use less of them so that they become less used to it. But overall, that's pretty counterintuitive. The second reason why I believe we cannot stop this resistance is because it can be a really big health and economic risk. From the American Society for Microbiology, it states that the potential impact of antibiotics on environmental bacteria is of significant concern, both from the perspective of enhancing the environmental reservoir of antibiotic resistance and through the inhibition of microorganisms that carry out important economic services. So basically, this means as we use antibiotics to get rid of bacteria in our plants or in our cells, those same antibiotics can end up turning on us and targeting our cells and hurting us, not only the bacteria. Well, the 99% of germs that you see in your hand sanitizer that are killed, not all of those are bad germs, some of them are good. And this is what it's saying. It can be a really bad health risk. Additionally, from the Journal of Infection and Public Health in 2017, it states that multi-drug resistance pattern in gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria have resulted in difficult to treat or even untreatable infections with conventional antimicrobials. Basically, it means that sometimes it just won't work. Antibiotics won't work. So as we have doctors and researchers investing a bunch of time and a bunch of money into developing drugs that can get past this bacteria, well, it turns out that there is no solution, or if there is one, it's not reasonable, because taking the antibiotic, yes, will kill the bacteria, but as I said before, can also kill us. So you're investing all this time and money for nothing, for an outcome that you won't necessarily get. And the third reason why we might not be able to stop, or I think we cannot stop this antibiotic resistance in bacteria, is because it has to be a global effort and not a local one. It has to be all over. So, from the BMJ Global Health Journal in 2019, it states that low income and middle income countries, LMICs, have been identified as a specific target for AMR and antibiotic use policies due to a range of factors that locate them as particularly vulnerable to the effects of AMR. So, as it states, if you are a low income or middle income country, you're going to use whatever drug you can get your hands on, no matter how cheap or how expensive. But now the governments are stuck because they want to give the people the drugs so that they can heal themselves from any bacterial infection, but they're being restricted because they know that there are consequences and that over time you give yourself these antibiotics, but your dosage has to go up and up because the bacteria is becoming resistant. Well, this comes into even more of a problem globally when you're talking about the spread of these bacteria. From the Scientific American in 1998, it states that the spread of resistant bacteria, which occurs readily, can extend quite far. In one example, investigators traced a strain of multi-drug resistant pneumoniae from Spain all the way to Portugal, France, Poland, the UK, South Africa, the US, and Mexico. So, when you're in an underdeveloped country like Spain or Brazil, and you don't necessarily have all the time and money and resources to develop such antibiotics, you're gonna, as I said before, give the people what they need. Well, when that happens, you're basically breeding bacteria that are essentially superbacteria and very resistant to antibiotics. Well, these superbacteria are able to get a host. That host can potentially fly to the US. So while the US was working very hard to limit its use of antibiotics and make sure no superbacteria form, somebody from Spain just started a breeding ground within the US. And all the efforts around the globe are now for nothing because one country didn't put in the work. Overall, I think that we can't stop antibiotic resistance. It's going to happen. It's evolution. Do I think it's not possible? No, it is possible, but it's just not reasonable. It couldn't happen because not everybody's on the same page. Our main solution right now is to use less antibiotics, which isn't even successful necessarily. Our second solution can be a really bad risk on our health and economic status. And the third reason is it has to be a global effort, which is just unrealistic. So the fight against antibiotic resistance is just a bad fight to take.